For me, starting to study art history was something I started very early. I actually had an art history teacher when I was in high school, and I never knew or understood that art history was a profession. I had no idea that people could sit around and study paintings and study art, and I thought, well, this is just the coolest thing ever. And so she kind of prompted me to pursue that. And I went into it very blind, not having any family or friends who have ever been in the museum world or in the art world. So I went into it kind of blind and not really knowing or realizing that there aren't really a lot of people who look like me or who have a background like me in the art world. And of course, slowly but surely that is changing, and I'm proud to be a part of that. But I definitely went into it not really knowing that that was the case. So I went into it kind of full steam ahead, and I knew I was one of those few kids who knew what they wanted to study. I went straight into my art history degree when I moved to Paris, and just kind of went from there. I knew that this is something that I wanted to do. I wasn't entirely sure that I wanted to go into curatorial work. That's something that happened a little bit later once I started to really focus in on the fact that I loved modern art specifically, that I loved surrealist art, and that I had a newfound sort of passion for contemporary art. But that's when I started realizing that I could tell stories through curatorial work, that I could, provide my own sort of story through that profession. And so before that, I really didn't know what I wanted to do with it. I just knew I wanted to be close to the art. And once you know that, there's really no going back, I don't think. So I was very fortunate in that sense that I knew exactly what I wanted to study, more or less where I wanted to go. And that took me to some pretty wonderful places. I moved to Paris when I was 18 years old, so that was quite a quite a culture shock for me, having been born and raised in Miami. And that's where I did my undergrad at the American University of Paris. I then moved to London to do my master's as a part of the Christie's Education Program, accredited by the University of Glasgow. So I was in Scotland part of the time too, kind of moving around. And then I moved to Venice to work for the Peggy Guggenheim collection. For me, moving to Venice was, another culture shock, as every experience has been for me, but I sort of live on that. I thrive off of that. And working in Venice was fantastic. The Peggy Guggenheim collection is an incredible, just really phenomenal institution. It's what used to be Peggy Guggenheim's home. So it's a small, really, really beautiful palazzo right on the Grand Canal. And they have a really, really robust internship program. And I think that internship program, I didn't realize it until much later, once I started working at PAM and touring our visitors and working very closely with our visitors. But I didn't realize how much that program had properly shaped me into the person that I am, the speaker that I am, the tour guide that I am when I have to do that. It's a program that really teaches you not only about her and the mission of the museum and the mission of, just what they try and do on a day-to-day basis with the children, with the local community, but it's a place that teaches interns to really understand how museums function. We're the first ones in. We're the ones who get the museum open. We're the ones who cover the works in the evening with their cotton pajamas. We're the ones who really keep the museum going. The interns are the lifeblood of that institution. And so we feel a certain level of responsibility when we're working there. If you're late to work, the museum, you have one less person selling tickets at the front desk, so it instilled this responsibility in us, and just this fascination of how museums work. And of course, it's very different from PAM, where I work now, because it's an institution that doesn't really change its collection. Works don't really go on loan very often. I believe they have one or two special shows a year, whereas PAM is constantly in flux. We're constantly changing exhibitions. We're constantly moving things around. So it's a different pace. PAM's mission and vision, I think, has always been very clear. We're well known now as a museum since 2013 because we're in this gorgeous waterfront Herzog and de Meuron building, but we've been a collecting institution since 1984, when we were the Center for the Fine Arts, and then we became the Miami Art Museum. So we have a long history within the Miami community, and the mission, I think, has been tweaked here and there for formal reasons, right? We reword it, but in reality, it's never changed. Our mission and vision has always been to be a place where the community can gather, a place where they can see themselves represented on the walls, a place where, it's Miami's front porch. so to speak. So we take that mission very seriously. And not only when it comes to accessibility and making sure that people can physically come to the museum, we have free days, we do our best to make it accessible, but we make sure that our permanent collection is reflective of what the true story of art is, and that people come to the museum and see themselves represented on the walls. And one of the main ways that we do that is we're a fully bilingual institution. So if you come to PAM and you pick up one of our catalogs, which I manage, or if you read the labels or the exhibition wall text or whatever it may be, everything is in English and in Spanish. And that is incredibly important to us because, of course, the Miami community is a community primarily, of immigrants. And I think of people like my parents who, speak English just fine, but for them, it's so much easier to read in Spanish. And so for them to feel like we're making the effort so that they feel comfortable, so that they feel like this is their home too, it automatically makes it more community driven. It makes it more accessible. It makes it more exciting. For PAM specifically, I know that our idea of a good day is when we have a lot of people in the museum. Obviously during COVID, that has taken on a very different definition. And so we have very strict guidelines and we're keeping our visitors safe. And so we have time ticketing and we've done all sorts of things to make sure that people remain safe. But, pre-COVID and hopefully in a couple months when we're living a slightly more normal life, we want to see our galleries full again. That is something that fills us up. I know that since my exhibition opened a couple weeks ago, 10 days ago now, it feels like forever ago, weirdly, but I've seen a lot of people in there and I've seen them engaging with the work. And that's why we do what we do. I feel as though I work not necessarily just for PAM, but I feel like I work for the community. I want people to come and I want them to find things that they like. I want them to enjoy the show. I want them to see themselves in it. I want them to talk to me about it. I spent some time down there and if I'm touring, sometimes people, they'll come close and they'll kind of, join in or ask me questions at the end. And I appreciate that. And I enjoy that because that's the experience that I'm trying to provide and that I know PAM is trying to provide. So this idea of museums being empty, I think is sad. I think that what we really want is people to be in there and use art as a catalyst for conversation.
Oh, I've missed doing that.
I miss saying, welcome to PAM.
I miss engaging with our diverse community.
I miss teaching Miami's diverse youth in our gallery.
I miss helping people find amazing gifts.
I miss collaborating with the artists and giving their vision life.
I miss taking a break from my work and relaxing with these amazing views.
I miss the excitement of installing new exhibitions for you.
I miss introducing great designs in the shop.
I miss my morning coffees at Verde.
I miss producing beautiful catalogs for our outstanding exhibitions.
I miss creating exciting visuals for you to experience.
I miss cooking for you, and I especially miss baking my creations in my new oven.
Our team has missed so much in the last few months, but most of all, we've missed you. Welcome back.
The Artist as Poet is an exhibition that I'm incredibly proud of and I'm incredibly excited to share with the world, really, because we get so many visitors, international visitors, but it's a result of many years of research. It's a result of a personal passion that I have of literature, but also, of course, art history and how the two can come together. I was confused as to how the movement started as a literary movement. It was Breton's intention for it to be a literary movement. And then when you take, art history 101 or whatever, and you learn about surrealism, you learn about Max Ernst and you learn about Dali and, and Yves Tanguy. And so you learn about a slightly different, I mean, yes, it is the story of surrealism, but it's not how it was intended to be. And so Breton was very flexible in the sense that he wrote this manifesto in 1924 and then started bringing people into the group who were painters, who were photographers. And so the definition of surrealism sort of changed, and the manifesto changed, and he wrote a second version. And so I was really fascinated by that idea, how a literary movement could turn into something that we now associate with something so entirely different. And at the heart of that was the only work that Breton ever produced that wasn't literature, which is the poem object. He would take poetry and found objects and put them together, both of them being equally important to the construction of the work. And he sort of argued in some of his speeches and in some of his writing that was in a way the ideal surrealist medium, because it brought together the elements that he thought were most important. And so I was really fascinated by this idea because I had never heard of the poem object until I started digging really deep and doing a lot of research. And so I found myself at the Kandinsky Library, at the Pompidou Center, often working with original documents in French. And I was just lucky to be in France at a time when that was of interest. The Pompidou had a really incredible exhibition when I was an undergrad, and I think it was called The Surrealist Object, I think. But it had this incredible catalog, and the show was just unbelievable. So that interest is something that became my master's thesis, and I created an exhibition that was based on this idea of the poem object and a redefinition of the poem object, how the poem object can be interpreted in contemporary times. And so I included works by like Mike Kelly and Manzoni and all these different artists that you wouldn't associate, obviously with the Surrealist movement, having been at a different time. But I wanted to tell that story with the PAM Permanent Collection. I thought that was a really wonderful opportunity to highlight the collection in a way that it hasn't been highlighted before. We have a lot of text-based work, primarily due to the fact that we received this really incredible donation from the Sackner Archive. And so when we received that gift, we've done 2 exhibitions since the museum opened in 2013 in our new building that is all Sackner Archive material. So I wanted to make sure that I used some of that work, but not exclusively from that donation. I wanted those works to dialogue with things that we've acquired in different ways, and works that we've acquired donations from Jorge Perez or from the Collectors Council or from numerous donors. I just wanted there to be more of a dialogue between the permanent collection. So that was a huge, huge emphasis for me. Miami has its own sort of energy, as all cities do. And me being a daughter of immigrants, I was born here in Miami, but my parents are from Nicaragua. So there are so many other Nicaraguan people here. And I joke all the time and I say that I'm an honorary Cuban, because if you're born and raised in Miami, you pick up the slang and you love your batilo de mamey and all these other Cuban foods. And it's a warm community. That's what I love about Miami, is that this is a warm place. This is a place where you can walk into most places and people will be quite kind. I mean, maybe I have a very rosy picture of Miami. I know that Miami also is known for being a very rude city, which is ironic that I'm saying this, but I think the people in Miami, our culture is to be kind. Our culture is to be warm. Our culture is to invite people into our home, to feed them. It's that Latin American culture that we're raised on. So you feel it here.